Hello everyone, today we're going to be talking about aspect ratios, what they are, how to use them, we're going to see some examples, and I'll tell you why I believe they are so important and how they can completely transform the viewing experience of our images. The aspect ratio doesn't have anything to do with the size of our image, but the proportions between the two sides of our photograph. As you know, most of my work, most of my images are square, so that means that the aspect ratio is 1:1 because they are the same, both sides are the same length. But as of lately, during the last few months, I've been experimenting with other aspect ratios and usually big panoramas. I've also used the popular 3:2 in my book, Becoming an American. So usually we're gonna have a subject in our image. Using different aspect ratios, we can change the position of that subject within the frame. This way, by changing the aspect ratio, we can create more negative space around that subject, or we can remove it. Let's look at the 3:2 aspect ratio first. This is kind of a standard. It's one of the most common and popular aspect ratios. It comes from the 35mm film cameras, and digital cameras just kept that aspect ratio. As you can see, the sensors nowadays are most of them 3:2. Even though you can change it in camera or you can crop it afterwards, since it's the default aspect ratio of most cameras, that is the default aspect ratio for most of the photographs that we see today. A lot of people think it's the most appealing aspect ratio because it's the closest to the golden ratio, and you can place your subject following the rule of thirds and still have a lot of negative space on the sides. To me though, and I don't know if this is due to the popularity of this aspect ratio or something else, but the images, 3:2 images, they feel a lot like photographs. I think they are ideal for documentary photography. I don't like this aspect ratio as much to create more artistic images. That's why in the past I've experimented quite a bit with 5:4 or 4:3. Those are still rectangular images, but they are closer to that square aspect ratio that I finally settled on. Don't quote me on this, but 4:3 might be the most popular aspect ratio today because most of the smartphones are 4:3, I believe, and also we have the micro four thirds camera systems. In any case, these two aspect ratios give you some advantages from the 3:2, so you can leave negative space on the sides and play a little bit with the subject while still having a better balance, in my opinion, in the overall frame. But of course, my favorite aspect ratio by far is the square 1:1, the Instagram ratio, right? This is what Instagram was using when it got started. Now you can post landscape and vertical photos, but at the beginning it was just square images, and that's how many people got to know that aspect ratio. But it's actually been with us for a long time. Like Polaroid cameras were square, medium format cameras like the Bronica or the Hasselblad, they were square as well, the Rolleiflex, all of those were square. So the square format has been with us for a long time. What I like about it, and this is just my opinion, is that it creates more balanced images than other aspect ratios. It evokes calm, and the eye doesn't switch constantly from side to side like it might do with 3:2. In the square image, it usually goes directly to the subject, and then you might go around the frame. I'm not really sure about this. I'm not an expert at how people look at those images, but I know what I do when I see a square image and the way my eyes kind of navigate the frame. It is very good for minimalistic images, and it favors a centered subject, so it gives it more importance in the frame. You can still create plenty of negative space. I like to play with the layers or lines for these. Diagonals work very well with the square images. I'm gonna be showing you now or later a lot of those examples. You'll see that I play a lot with those lines in my images because I think they work very, very well. I have a whole video about composing in a square that you can check out here. And lastly, we get to panoramas. This is something I've been experimenting with a lot in the last few months. I don't follow any aspect ratio. I just crop the image to whatever it feels right. Sometimes it's 16:9, sometimes it's 30:9, whatever. It doesn't really matter. I'm just playing with it and just experimenting to see what I can create this way. So what most photographers I know do when they create panoramas is they stitch together a bunch of vertical images, and that is fine if you want to print really big, but I don't do that. I create panoramas from just one single shot, and there are many reasons for that. The first one is that I don't need huge files because my prints are not that big, and many times I'm photographing something, the subject is moving, or there is some kind of, for example, fog or clouds that are moving, and if I have to take a bunch of shots, it's not gonna work, the stitching afterwards. So I just take a regular shot that is gonna be 3:2 when I import it to Lightroom, and I just crop it to the aspect ratio that I feel is gonna work the best for that image. This leads us to a very important question, and it's like, should we decide on the aspect ratio before taking the shot or after we take the shot? Here I think, as a rule of thumb, that the more clear the image is in our mind when we press the shutter button, the better, because it's gonna make our life much easier afterwards. But I see no problem, and I do it all the time, about changing our minds and changing the aspect ratio and recomposing in post. That is totally fine as long as it works. For me, the editing part of photography can be as creative, if not more, than the actual shooting part. So hopefully I've convinced you to experiment with different aspect ratios. If you shoot with 3:2, try with 4:3, 5:4, or even square. Try making panoramas, switch it up a little bit. Anyway, this is all I had for today. I hope it was useful. Thank you so much for watching again, and see you in the next one.